Hi, my name is Aditi of richhappyandfree.com, and I'm here with Kathy Roberts from New Jersey, who has developed over the years an online business called The Tidy Tutor. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Abby. How are you?
So it's daytime here, nighttime there. There's about 11 hours difference between us.
Yeah.
And we've got winter and summer happening as well.
Yeah, it's very fun.
We've got all our opposites going on. And so that was my next question. The most difficult block you've had to overcome to get to where you are today. Would you say that was self-esteem or self-belief?
Yeah, I think that's the truth. Is my biggest block is believing in myself and doing something that's out of the ordinary and putting myself in a position where people might be able to throw stones at me.
Okay.
Like, who do you think you are, and what are you doing? And so I think that was the hardest part, just taking the step and doing it anyway.
Risking disapproval.
Yes. And the way I did that was I just didn't tell anybody. I just did it without telling anybody. So when I wrote my book, I didn't let anybody know I was writing a book. When I started my website and started taking the course that I took, especially that it was $3,000, and the world that I live in, if they found out, like now it's a whole different story because this is what I do. This is who I am. It's become my identity. But before that, it would be considered, getting ripped off or being like gullible. How you got, involved with that stuff. They're ripping you off. And I just knew that I needed to get educated, and this is how much it costs. So I took a chance on it, and I figured, well, if it doesn't work, it's kind of like an investment. And instead of investing in a bad stock, I invested in me.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful thing, because one of the other questions I was going to ask you is how important is education?
It's everything.
In developing a new business.
Yeah, it's everything. It's everything. When I first, a long time ago, in 1984, I had a consignment shop. And back then in 1984, there was no internet or anything like that. But I had to know, what do I do? How do I do this? And I was only 20-something years old. So I got in an entrepreneur magazine. In the back of the magazine, it had loose leaves that you could buy for businesses. How to start a consignment shop, how to start a produce market, how to start a gas station, it was all that. And you bought one. And it was $250 then. Now, back then in 1984, a 3-bedroom apartment was $300, 15 minutes from Manhattan. So if it was in today's dollars, it would have been about $1,500, maybe a little bit more, maybe more like $2,000. So, $250 then was a lot of money. And I knew there's no way. I didn't know how do I pick a location? How do I buy the stands and the racks, and how do I advertise? So even then it was necessary. You can't just start a business. There's expenses to starting a business. In an online business, you're really blessed, because even though it does cost money, it doesn't cost as much as a brick and mortar does.
And so in terms of education as well, what would you say the role of a mentor is? Like, how important is it to have a business mentor?
It's very, very important. I was just reading a book that was called The Power of Broke. I forgot the name of the author, but he's on Shark Tank. And one of the things he goes into in one of the chapters that I really wanted to write down and study was how important mentors are. And people that have mentors make 70 some odd, I forget the exact number, but 70 some odd % more money than they would without a mentor. And then he goes into how they come up with that conclusion. It's very, very clear that you make more money with a mentor. You get where you want to go faster with a mentor. You will quit without a mentor. So mentors have mentors.
And it's also like a mentor is the person who believes in you.
Yes.
Perhaps when that weakest link comes up for you, which is like, oh, can I get through this, or is this too hard? Or
absolutely.
My parents are against this, or my partner is against this, or my kids are against this.
Yeah. There was a time in our history that it was all about The Apprentice. You followed someone for many years, 10 years or so, and learned from them. Michelangelo, he had a mentor. Leonardo da Vinci had a mentor. They apprenticed underneath someone. They might not have even have been as good as they were, but they still needed to have that knowledge and practice. So, and somebody to follow. So it's only recently that we think that we could take a course, not have any help, and then, somehow succeed in it. It doesn't happen.
That makes perfect sense. So what would be one piece of actionable advice that you could give to somebody thinking of starting up, especially somebody, say, in our situation with children, and it's not quite the same as being singular. It doesn't feel the same to me.
No. It's more work. You have to realize that it's going to take a little bit longer than it would for somebody that had, better circumstances. But actually, in reality, nobody has great circumstances. Anybody that's starting a business has to have a job too. So even if they have no kids, they still have a full-time job. Maybe say it's a man that doesn't have to take care of the kids. He still has to work and take care of the household. Whatever it is, everybody's got their circumstance. So if you think of an excuse, it ain't going to happen. So just take it as it's part of the game. It ain't easy. It ain't easy. So I guess that's the one thing, is just realize that you just take it a step at a time, and don't see anything that seems like a stop, like a stopping point, as something that you can't overcome. Because the fact is that if you have something that, like, you're walking down the road and you stop, then all it means is that you're actually doing something. Because the only way you can keep going and then have that stop or hit a bump is if you're on the road and you're moving. So if you're on the road and you're moving, then you got a hurdle to climb, you got something to go over, you got something to climb under, but at least you're on the road. You're not sitting on the sidelines, and as long as you're doing something, you're going to get somewhere. Doing nothing gets us nowhere.
And so what would you tell everyone, just a one-line quote that you have in your heart that helps you get through those bumps in the road?
I guess what I say to myself is just do it. But I don't say just do it, because just do it is kind of like bullshit. Sorry. It's just do it anyway. Just do it anyway. So that word anyway covers like a multitude of thoughts between your ears, because just do it, then you could be, but then you have that anyway, just do it anyway,
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome. One other thing that I think that really stops people from doing something or starting is they think that they have to know exactly what they're going to do before they start doing something. And that you don't have to know what you're going to do, because 9 times out of 10, whatever you do start with, it's not going to thing that you actually end up doing. When you start, you might say, all right, you know what, I want to teach people how to do this, say, grow a garden. And then you go into that a little bit, and you make your website, you do all kinds of things to do it. And then in your journey, you find out, wow, I really love this. And a lot of times people will just completely switch gears because they didn't know what they didn't know before that. So it really doesn't even matter if you don't know what you want to do, because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to do that thing anyway. People get stuck with a name. Your name is going to change. I had 4 or 5 names for my business before it actually is what it is. And I remember agonizing over each one of them. So now when I have somebody that I coach, I just tell them, don't even care, because it might not even be that in another 2 months. Just, let's do the best we can with picking something, and then after that, let it go, because it may not even be what it's going to be ultimately. So we waste a lot of time on stuff we don't need to waste a lot of time on. So just do something, because even if what you're doing isn't what you ultimately do, you get practice in marketing, you get practice in web design, you get practice in emailing, you get practice in webinars, you get practice in doing interviews, and all of that you'll use on what you ultimately do anyway. So it is absolutely a win. Just do it anyway.
All right, so that's sort of part of the education part of the question, in a sense, isn't it? Is that we're learning new skills.
Absolutely.
Clearly, if we look at how we got to where we are today. If we keep doing the same old, well, we're just going to stay in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to make any real change and affect any real growth, we've got to sort of change the path that we're on, and that includes skill development, which can be uncomfortable, it can be fun.
Scary. Yes.
And I think you mentioned about people will still have to have a job even if they're starting a new business. And so we go through that really crunchy period where we're balancing working the long hours or working the hours that we've got in a job, and then we're often parents, so we're dealing with organising a family and running a household. And then on top of that, we're like, oh, great, I've got 3 minutes to develop my business. But like you say, with those baby steps, with the right education and with the right group of people to support you, then that's the most fertile ground for growing this business garden.
And sometimes you end up actually looking back and saying, wow, I was the most productive when I was the most busy. Because you find that, they say that, you want something done, give it to a busy person. So, sometimes you're like, wow, I kind of wish I was back there again.
Yeah, because also because if you're really committed to something, you're not making excuses anymore. Mm-hmm. Awesome. And the other thing I wanted to mention actually is that you have, you told me that after your divorce that you were cleaning houses and painting the interiors of people's extensions, renovations, and also offices and things. Yeah. And so being a single mum of 5 and also juggling those 2 very physical jobs plus developing this online business, you've now got to a position where you're living independently from that passive income, that residual income, and you're traveling the world and teaching other people how to also develop their online businesses.
Yes,
that's an amazing evolution from.
It really is. And if you asked me if it would have happened 5 years ago, I would have said, how the heck could that happen? Yeah, I mean, holy mackerel, honestly, if it could happen for this, Italian, very normal, regular, I don't know how normal I am, but very regular, mother of 5 from New Jersey, very traditional, it can happen for anybody, honestly.
That's inspiring. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was wonderful to do this.
So if you've enjoyed this video and you found it useful, please like and share. And you can go to richhappyandfree.com where you can learn more really useful information on how to develop your own business.